Did you bring the same hookers you had last night over to your house today to take care of him?
It'd be rude if you didn't. What is happening, everybody? Welcome to MLB Live Before Locking. I'm going to be frank with you guys. The slate today, it's kind of trash. So I'm playing lineups and some of the lower dollars. Yeah, go ahead, Eric. Looks like you're giving me the pause signal there.
One lineup okay. Today.
Yeah, so I'm playing 150 lineups and some of like the low dollar stuff though. So I've got some rooting interest for today, some stuff to pay attention to. But yeah, we've got a 3-game slate here, and it's not the prettiest. The good news, we've got all of the lineups in, so we've got all that settled. Hopefully no late scratches, so I don't think I'm going to have to be changing anything over the course of the show. I think what I have built right now, probably good to go. It's probably going to be the final version of my lineup. So if you guys have any questions as we go here, I don't think we're going to need the full hour, but if you guys want us to take the full hour, you can ask as many questions as you want, whether in the YouTube chat, got questions for us in Discord. I don't think there's going to be a plethora of players for Eric and I to be breaking down here. So we'll go through all of the pitchers individually on DraftKings and FanDuel. We'll talk about our favorite stacks. And then, like I said, anything else that you guys want us to talk about, whatever it might be you have questions about, throw that into chat. Eric, how was your Uncrustable?
Well, it was absolutely fantastic. I didn't know if you saw what I was eating over here, but I just got done.
No,
I went to the gym quick after our meeting, and then just got back. I was like, you know what? An Uncrustable sounds really good. And so I have like this whole package of them down in the freezer. And so you have to like put them up in the fridge or like let them thaw out. But like, is there anything quite like an Uncrustable like for lunch? I can't think of anything I would rather have for lunch ever.
I mean, like a regular made peanut butter and jelly sandwich?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, when you're in a hurry, when you're like running around and you're doing your stuff, like an Uncrustable is the nuts.
Here's a question. Does your, now that, because I know this is the case for me, and we're about the same age. You're a little bit older than me, but not like anything significant or anything. Well, jokes aside that I made in the past. Have you found that your body reacts differently to eating something like peanut butter and jelly or an Uncrustable?
No.
Okay. I can't handle sugar.
Like at all?
It's, if I was to eat like a peanut butter and jelly at night, there's a shit ton of sugar in that. I don't know what it is.
9 grams. Like, that's more than I actually thought there was in it. But 9 grams, it's 210 calories. I don't know. It's just, one of those things where I don't get any sugar out of anything that I really drink anymore. This has like 3 grams of sugar. These Poppy, like these probiotic ones. Apparently they're getting sued though, because they don't actually have probiotics in it. And my wife is pissed off because she's been drinking those nonstop to quit soda.
If I was to have peanut butter and jelly or something like that before I went to bed at night, and not like immediately before, but like any time at night, like even like after dinner, like 7 p.m. Eastern time, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time or whatever, I wouldn't sleep that night. It would keep me up. I wake up in the middle of the night. I could check my watch and like my Apple Watch. It changes the quality of sleep I get. So I don't know. My body just doesn't know what to do with it anymore. There wasn't a problem with me when I was younger.
Well, something I learned about you in New York, you only eat 1 meal a day, correct?
Not all the time, but yeah, like fairly regularly, I'll have days where I just eat 1 meal.
I brought it up to one of my buddies the other day where I was just like, yeah, my buddy Greg that I do shows with, he eats like one meal a day. He goes, that's what I do. He like eats for an hour window of the day every day. And then the other 23 hours he's fasting. He's just like the most in shape dude that I know.
Yeah, I will have like little snacks that I eat over the course of the day. Like I keep like Costco peanuts, get a little bit of protein. But other than that, yeah, like I'm pretty good just eating like once per day. But whatever, nobody gives a shit about this. We've got some
It's
baseball to
better
talk
than
about.
this
Mark
slate.
Nugent has left us a super chat. Says, thank you, gentlemen. Won too large yesterday due to the Jays and Phillies stack. Yeah, Phillies came through for us yesterday, which we've had a good run of picking on just shit chalk starting pitching as of late. And by the way, same thing happened earlier today. Jose Quintana gets lit up by the Oakland A's. Another one, just a chalk pitch. I get it was a 4-game slate earlier, but we've had a lot of these instances this week of chalk starting pitching get blown up in spots where they're way overowned. And considering that's how I usually build my lineups, is I try to attack those pitchers. Like yesterday, Edward Cabrera. Yeah, it's been a good week for us.
Yeah, I 3x'd yesterday. I thought I was going to win a bunch of stuff and sent you a couple lineups and that I had in the $3. The big problem, I can't remember what it was, but Brian Wu not getting the win was actually useful, but you still kind of wanted him at 25. You didn't need him because you definitely needed access to Kyle Schwarber and some of the expensive bats, but I needed like anything. It was weird. I had like White Sox 2-mans and 3-mans in a lot of my stuff where if I got anything out of Miguel Vargas, that guy is just fucking trash. I'm glad the Dodgers parted way with him because I can't stand the look of him and that 0 I had in my lineup.
It was, I mean, there was a lot of spots that were kind of tough to avoid. Like even going and stacking heavily against Edward Cabrera yesterday was still like Robbie Ray. He was terrible. Who else? There was a couple of other popular pitchers.
Good. I was under on that too. So I mean, overall, it's been a really good week, and I think this just kind of reinstates like, it sucks because we haven't like hit the big one on it. I didn't win the $3 yesterday. I don't think you won the 121 yesterday, but like, you want to do the right things every single day and then throw the results out the window. It's nice to see the stuff get, completely torched, but like, I think that's kind of with MLB. The last couple of years I've had like 1 hit or 2 hits in like the big tournaments. And like, that's more than covered my entire MLB season. There's so many slates and, getting leverage in any capacity that you can. And also when you see volatility, like when there's spots to attack like that, I think that those are the best kind of slates. I don't see a ton of it today on today's 3-gamer, but maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to be building one lineup for it. I was thought about maybe playing like 3 max, but I'm just going to play one and I'm still going to build 150, but there's just not as many of those attackable spots when you only have 3 games to pick through.
Yeah, I mean, I just played 150 lineups in like the mini max contest and just give me some rooting interest. Maybe a lineup pops, maybe one doesn't, but I don't have like that much invested in it to where I'll look at it and be like, oh my God, I shouldn't have built lineups for this shitty slate or anything like that. But I think we've got some interesting points to talk about, in particular at pitching. It starts at the top. Zach Wheeler, he is the only pitch. There's a big gap between Zach Wheeler and everybody else. Zach Wheeler is $9,600. The second most expensive pitcher on the slate is one of Eric's many not favorite pitchers from the Minnesota Twins, Bailey Ober. But Zach Wheeler is 63% owned on the high end here at pitching. And here's what it kind of comes down to. If you're building a lineup and you've got like $9,600 or $1,000 or 10,000 plus on the table, I just don't know how you click on anybody other than Zach Wheeler.
Yeah, you click on Zach Wheeler. There's really nothing around it. And that's what I'm saying. Like, normally this would be like, oh, Zach Wheeler's going to be 65% owned and I'm only playing one lineup. Let's play Washington. And I see 0 reason to do that, actually less than 0 reason to do that. So for me, I'm just playing Zach Wheeler and moving on with my life. He's the best pitcher by a considerable margin. Now, you can make the argument that Nick Pivetta is a better strikeout pitcher. He has been over the course of the last year and a half, but I'm definitely looking at Zach Wheeler as more of the sure thing to click into my lineups here first.
Shout out to Chris Williams, who gifted out 5 YouTube memberships. Chris, thank you as always for supporting the channel. And anybody else who wants to support us, just like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Now, here's what I'm doing with Zach Wheeler. And I mean, it's really just what the Sims are doing because I just ran the lineups through. I selected the top 150 lineups and I'm pretty well underweight to the field on Zach Wheeler. Now, with that said, if you're hand building a lineup or two, I think you're probably playing Zach Wheeler in it. I get to more of the Nationals than the field does, but it's not like an obscene amount of national stacks. I have 11% of them. They're projected for 11% ownership. Let's see. Those are my 5-man stacks. I've also got a few 4-man stacks to the Washington Nationals. I guess overall I'm a little bit overweight to them. But what I am doing in a bunch of my lineups is, while still having a chunk of Zach Wheeler, I'm a little bit underweight to the field on him. And instead, there are some pitchers that are cheaper that I have in a handful of lineups that we're going to be talking about here. But single entry, if I was playing one lineup, yeah, Zach Wheeler would be in just that one lineup. Seems like that's the same case for yourself.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
All right, so let's talk about the next range of pitchers then, where we'll group these 3 guys. Actually, let's just group all 4 of these pitchers together. Mitchell Parker, he could be his own piece of shit that we'll talk about afterwards. Bailey Ober is $8,200. Cody Bradford is $8K. Nick Pivetta is $7,500. Zach Eflin is $6,900. And these pitchers are kind of comparably owned. 41% ownership going to Ober, 22% to Bradford, 30% to Pivetta, 34% to Eflin. So of these pitchers, $8,200 to $6,900, who is the one you like the most?
So the one that I like the most, in terms of like what I think the upside is potentially, is Bailey Ober, but he's going to be the most popular. And, you gave that lovely intro. I'm not the biggest Bailey Ober fan because I think that there's just warts that exist. Now, he's been a lot better this season. I don't want to go completely besmirch him, but he still has that 8.8% barrel percentage. He still finds ways of giving up hard fly ball contact from time to time. And it just translates into, in very inopportune spots when it's nice outside or a smaller ballpark, in runs above expectation. This year, 3.35 ERA, expected ERA, 3.52 ERA. He's actually been a tad bit unlucky. So it is something for Bailey Ober. I think he's great to get to, but I'm going to be getting away from that just because I think playing one lineup, playing in single entry stuff, he's going to be pulling a little bit more weight there. And rather than going Wheeler, Ober, and then just finding a chalky offense or something like that, I do like getting to another pitcher that is not Bailey Ober up here. But no doubt if I were making 150, he'd be my second highest owned pitcher.
Yeah, so the 2 pitchers I have the most of overall are Zach Eflin and Nick Pivetta. And it has a couple of aspects to it. Number one, it's not the 60+% ownership on Zach Wheeler. If you're playing these 2 guys at pitcher, you could literally play whatever the hell you want at offense. It's also a 3-game slate. A lot of people in tournaments are too opposed to leaving a bunch of salary on the table. That doesn't matter all that much for baseball. Like, it wouldn't be the most insane scenario for Zach Eflin, Nick Pivetta to each put up like 20 fantasy points. Wheeler puts up 19, and then you just have like a different build from other people. So I'm cool with leaving a bunch of salary on the table for GPPs. I have some of my, actually here, like my 3rd highest lineup by Sim ROI, Eric, leaves $2,300 in salary on the table. My second highest projected lineup by Sim ROI leaves $2,000 in salary on the table. There is no issue with building lineups that are stacked. They've got correlation to them and just leave a bunch of salary on the table. So I'm going to use that as my mechanism to have lineups that are built differently than the field. And as such, I get to my 2 most rostered starting pitchers being Zach Eflin and Nick Pivetta.
Yep. I am just fine with that. My lineup leaves $700 on the table, which isn't as much as that, but my one lineup, I'm leaving $700 on the table with that consideration. So this is still a spot where, you can play the best plays, but then you're going to be just duped so many places and running into so many spots. Like, you can still get to the best plays and have that one differentiator leaving $2,300 on the table. And you're going to be in a lot better sim ROI spot, I think, in the long run, once you get to the flip. When you go to the post-contest generator, that's something I've seen a lot on 3 and 4 game slates is, I'm always mystified at what my highest sim ROI lineups are after the fact, because they're never what I think they're going to be going into it. But normally a good fail-proof way of avoiding that is, all right, like, let's just leave $1,000 on the table. And you can just sort it so easily in the Sims tool too. I used the single game, the single lineup generator there today. I thought it was really fun, a good exercise for me to get more familiar with the tool. And yeah, I left $700 of salary on the table.
And then if we go ahead and look at the other pitchers that we haven't brought up yet, Bailey Ober at $8,200. I mean, he projects pretty similarly for us compared to Eflin and Pivetta. Just Eflin and Pivetta, a little bit cheaper, also lesser owned. So Bailey Ober, I don't have an issue with him other than the fact that he's just really popular. So I'm underweight to the field on him, a little bit underweight to field on Wheeler. Wheeler is my third most rostered starting pitcher. I don't have like a crazy underweight stand to him or anything, just a little bit underweight there. And then Bradford, another one that I don't really get all that much of. Him, though, is because I think that of the pitchers that are priced around this range, he's easily the worst, in my opinion.
Correct. There's like no doubt. Correct.
And then also, if you look at Cody Bradford, it's not just that he's a pitcher that I don't even know how deep he's going to be able to go into the game. We've seen him make 6 appearances this year, overall 5 starts, but his last 2 starts, he went 5 and 3 2/3 innings. Before that, he was out of the bullpen and pitched 2 innings. I don't really know that he's stretched out to go deeper than 5 anyway. So that's another issue that I have with the potential upside here of Bradford. And then on top of that, if you look at him in the past, he's not somebody who's been a massively high strikeout pitcher. Like 2023, where he split his time between being a reliever and a starter, we saw him have a 21.8% strikeout rate. So even if he's pitching his best game, he doesn't have the same upside as the pitchers priced around him due to the lower strikeout rate. So Bradford is pretty easily my least favorite pitcher in this pricing range. Do you have any takes on Mitchell Parker, though? He's kind of the odd man out, sub 10% owned. He's the one guy that nobody's clicking on. Tough matchup for him against, didn't prevent people from rostering Cabrera against the Phillies yesterday, but Mitchell Parker, he's going to be on the road pitching against the Phillies. He's the one guy with no ownership going to him. Any reason to be playing him?
Yeah, the fact that there's only 6 pitchers to choose from, and he's one of them. That's why you should have some Mitchell Parker. If you're playing 150, you're going to play some Mitchell Parker. How much? I'm currently got 6% in my 150. I'm not playing 150. I want to repeat that, but I definitely feel as though Mitchell Parker is going to get slaughtered. I hope because I have 0 Phillies in my lineup currently. I'm hoping it isn't a crazy slaughtering by any means, but there's no doubt that he's the weakest of the group. I will say, just to go back to Bradford, one bet I do like today, and I talked about it a little bit last night, is the under of 2.5 earned runs for him. Brought up a lot of those limitations. It's minus 130 over at BetMGM. I think it's a really sharp play for a couple of reasons. One, I don't think he is going to be allowed to go beyond like 90, 95 pitches. He got up to 92. It was only 3 starts since he had been back as a starter there. It had been like 3 months since we had a start. But then the second part of that is, well, you know, these Minnesota Twins, it's definitely a freaky lineup there at the top for strikeouts, but Cody Bradford's been all right. So I just want to at least point out that, like, it's not that I'm just going out of my way to roster Cody Bradford or do anything specific with him. I think under 2.5 earned runs is fantastic as far as like positive EV over there at OddsShopper today.
I've got some lineups with Mitchell Parker, but of all of the pitchers on the slate, he's the one who shows up in the least amount of lineups for me. And another thing, too, if you guys are playing 1, 2, 3 lineups, Mitchell Parker wouldn't be in any of them. The only reason I get some exposure to him is because it's a 3-game slate. I played 150 low stakes lineups, and you just run out of people to choose from in a lot of those lineups. So Mitchell Parker in some of these lineups, but for a lot of people who are watching the show, they're playing limited lineups. He is pretty easily my least favorite pitcher on the entire slate. Anything else you want to add about the DraftKings pitchers?
Yeah, the Nick Pivetta one. You should know every single time Nick Pivetta's chalk, you should stack against him. Every time Nick Pivetta is under-owned, you should play him. I feel like he's in the under-owned camp, so I'm playing Wheeler. I'm playing Pivetta as my 2 pitchers.
So let's talk about the pitchers on FanDuel now. And here's where the dynamic changes a little bit because Zach Wheeler is 47% owned. So right around half of the field is going to be playing Zach Wheeler. As a result of that, nobody else really pulls that much ownership relative to it being a 3-game slate. Bailey Ober's 10% owned. He's also 10,600. Somehow Bailey Ober is more expensive than Zach Wheeler on FanDuel. That's pretty
Riddle
wild.
me that. Riddle me that.
Bailey Ober, 10.6. He's 10% owned. Nick Pivetta, $9,400. He's 10% owned. Zach Eflin, $8,400. He's 17% owned. Bradford's 12% owned. And then nobody's really playing Mitchell Parker. He is only 3% owned. Zach Wheeler, he's clearly your cash game pitcher over on FanDuel. For a GPP, though, Eric, would you be playing the 50% owned Zach Wheeler, or would you be looking to one of the lesser owned or potentially cheaper starting pitchers?
Yeah, with one lineup, Pivetta or Ober, probably Pivetta, $1,000 less, sitting around 5.5 strikeouts, just barely plus money on the over of that. I think that that's a decent enough spot. Obviously, it's very, very dangerous going up against Baltimore. They have the second highest implied team total on today's slate, but Looking to try to get different. I mean, it would probably just really depend on what offenses I was firing up over on FanDuel as well. So if I'm playing some contrarian offenses, like obviously you wouldn't be getting to Washington if you had Wheeler out there, but if I were getting to Texas, I think you'd be all right playing some Zach Wheeler and it'd be okay to eat that chalk. But I'd be inclined to try to find my way into some Pavetta and Ober. I'd slightly prefer Pavetta just to get a little bit of a different build and upgrade one bat elsewhere.
All right. Well, let's try to do some process of eliminate because here's the answer with the FanDuel pitchers. I think Zach Wheeler's too popular. Nearly 50% ownership for any pitcher on most baseball slates. I'm probably gonna have some sort of an issue with it. So, all right, I want to take him out of the mix because of his popularity. Bailey Ober, like really 10,600 for Bailey Ober. How does he be more expensive than Zach Wheeler on any slate? I don't really understand that. That to me is something that's a little bit prohibitive. So then you got Mitchell Parker, Cody Bradford, not good enough, not enough upside for me. Then I'm between Nick Pivetta and Zach Eflin. Between the two of them, I lean a little bit more towards the Pivetta side at half the ownership of Eflin.
Yep, we're together on that then. I think
so.
I'm
I just kind of did it by I wasn't going to look at this and be like, I love one pitcher. I'm just going to work backwards and eliminate guys I don't like until I just land on the one that I dislike the least.
Yeah, the worst thing you can do in tout life, Greg, is to just be over. Like I don't know. It's my pet peeve, and I've done it myself. So I'm not gonna say like just the overconfidence when we're talking about data. Like it's probabilities, and like Zach Wheeler being 50% owned. Why is like what does it mean for something to be overowned? It means that relative to his chances of success, we have him as a top 1% of the time, 25.3%. He's much higher owned. Now, there are a lot of times you play this slate out and you're going to need Zach Wheeler, but Nick Pivetta, I'm saving the $1,000. We're getting to 16% for a top 1 percentage, but don't forget that it's also the opportunity that he has that he's at a different price point where I can upgrade and change my lineup and have it be different. Whereas like those Wheeler lineups are going to look pretty similar to the Bailey Ober lineups. Obviously, you won't have Washington going up against Wheeler. You won't have Texas going up against Bailey Ober more than likely. But as you work through it, like just think about what that looks like. Why is he overowned? He's overowned because, well, the other pitchers have more of a chance. So like I will take the field in these kind of situations on FanDuel rather than embrace the chalk because the number of times that you'll get paid when Zach Wheeler has a bad outing is exponentially higher.
See if there's any questions about pitching that came into us from Discord. Looks like that is a negative. Yeah, nobody asking us about the pitchers for today. No cash game questions people are coming up with us, which that a little bit of a relief because, FanDuel, Zach Wheeler, pretty easy to plug into cash. DraftKings, it is really hard for me to. I mean, I guess I would just say Bailey Ober and Zach Wheeler because they're the two most popular starting pitchers. Not to feel great about Bailey Ober, but I guess I'll just let the ownership kind of dictate that. Seeing some people are submitting some lineups to us in the YouTube chat. If you want to start plugging some of those in, Jordan, and we'll review some of the people's lineups in here. Also, I saw somebody bring up King Crown and said, anyone touch on Bradford's pitch count being a big question mark? Yeah, we touched on that a little bit. I really don't know what to expect out of him. I think it's unlikely that even in a best case scenario, he realistically goes more than 5 innings, though.
I will say that I think it's less of like a concern. Like if he's pitching well, I'd find it unlikely that he's going to pitch less than 85 pitches. And I think on a slate of this size, when he's the second lowest owned pitcher, it's probably not something I'm going to consider a ton in this spot. He's been good in his brief, sample size here of this season. But once again, I'm obviously hoping, considering I have money on that under of 2.5 runs allowed, I'm hoping that, maybe there is a short hook that can come along with it. He's also not one of my pitchers. If you're playing one lineup, I'd find it very hard to land on Cody Bradford. 4.5 his strikeout prop across the industry, and the over is sitting at -105, the under -120, kind of the prevailing number. So for me, I think you can probably just go to any of the other pitchers and be just fine.
Yep. Don't really like Cody Bradford. Don't really like Mitchell Parker in a couple of lineups for me, but nothing all that crazy. Any final thoughts on pitchers here? If not, we'll start looking at some lineups that people in YouTube chat have given to us.
Yeah, let's look at some lineups.
All right. So what do we have here? Who submitted this one, Jordan? This is a pretty good looking lineup. 34% sim ROI. All right. And it is a twin stack with Wheeler and Eflin as the pitchers. Yeah, I think that's a pretty reasonable stack for tonight's slate. The chalk of the night, that is going to be the Philadelphia Phillies taking on Mitchell Parker. We've got the Phillies pulling 23% ownership, Twins pulling 19% ownership, Orioles 17% ownership, Red Sox 15% ownership, Texas 14% ownership. Then you got Washington down here with 12% projected ownership. Eric, which offense is your favorite overall to stack?
Oh, my favorite would be like ad nauseum Philly, but I'm not going to be playing Philly in my one lineup today, so that's kind of what it is. I'd be just fine if you wanted to get away from that, but I think at 25%, when a quarter of the time they're going to show up optimal, and then their ownership share is a little bit lower. Pretty much every team is about properly owned in our tools right now. We've got Minnesota a little bit positively leveraged, Texas a little bit positively leveraged, but otherwise, kind of pick your fighter, choose your fighter kind of a deal. I think Philadelphia would be the top, and if I were playing 150, I think Philadelphia would definitely be the one I'd be the heaviest on, because Mitchell Parker, the weakest of the pitchers by a pretty considerable margin, even though you can make a case that Nick Pivetta probably the guy that when it goes poorly, you're going to probably want to have more Baltimore bats in your life for sure.
For me, it's the Texas Rangers, and it's kind of twofold.
That's my
it's the team that
stack.
shows up the most, and I run everything through the Sims. On top of that, we do have the Texas Rangers as being a team that has slight positive leverage. Like you said, Eric, there's only two positive leverage teams on the entire slate for us. It's the Texas Rangers, the Minnesota Twins. If I'm playing single entry, those are the two teams that I'm considering in between if you guys are just building one lineup. But what I like about Texas is not only do we have some of the positive leverage in terms of them being under-owned as a stack relative to their price, but you're also getting leverage off a really, really popular Bailey Ober. They're the second lowest owned team on the slate. I think it's really reasonable to say there's like tiers to the offenses, and the tiers I put them in, it's like Philly at the top, Washington, and this is just in terms of expected output, not ownership is in this as well. It kind of plays out the same way, but Philly at the top, Washington at the bottom, and every other team is pretty close grouped together in between. I don't think there's a whole bunch that separates them. And that's what makes me like the Texas Rangers, because you're going up against the most popular pitcher of that group.
I'm with you. Yeah, Texas is my favorite offense. I've talked about Bailey Ober how many times. Again, I don't think I'm just going to redo this one more time, because I mean, Bailey Ober has been much, much better this season. But I do think that the times that you're having them win out and being the team that you need on this slate, I think Texas is going to be relatively under-owned, whereas I think everybody else hitting their max is pretty properly owned here at the moment. It's a weaker lineup without Corey Seager. That's the main concern that I have. But yeah, working through it, it is definitely a spot for me where I think Texas is probably the premier team if you're playing one lineup or single entry.
Yeah, and looking in chat here, it looks like Jordan is plugging in Ryan Renebaum's lineup. It is a FanDuel lineup. Oh, sorry, what's that, Jordan? Oh, okay. So we killed that lineup off. I want to try, after you're done running this lineup through, just seeing if we could build a national stack that shows up as being a positive sim ROI. Just kind of curious, see if we could even potentially do this.
We definitely can.
And then also, if you guys want to sign up for any of our baseball tools, any data package or Sims package that we have here at Stokastic, it does come with the single lineup simulator here. You can sign up using the link down below in the YouTube description box. This lineup, negative 1.1% sim ROI. Whose lineup was this one, Jordan? All right, so Cap and Akella's lineup here. It's not massively negative or anything, but it's not rating out the best. Let's see where it's going wrong. So it's Zach Wheeler, Zach Eflin, and then what is it? Baltimore Orioles stack, and scroll down a little bit. Also with Texas Rangers and a Minnesota Twins there. So the construction of the lineup isn't really an issue at all. What I do think is showing up as potentially a little bit of an issue here, though, is the ownership is so high, which could be one of the reasons that it has a little bit of a lower / negative sim ROI, because you got some leverage there with the Texas Rangers, with only 2 Texas bats, and then Wheeler at pitcher. The Orioles are also really popular. Scroll, he's got a Wyatt Langford there. I wonder what if we changed the Minnesota Twins. It looks like is that Wallner? It's kind of hard for me to read what's on the screen. Okay. Is there a way that we could change him to another Texas Rangers outfielder?
No.
What happened?
No, nothing. I was just being a dick.
See what the sim ROI is if you plug in the highest projected Texas Rangers outfielder that fits into that lineup. Yeah. So plug in Leody Tavares. Just gives him a little bit extra
today, Junior.
Curious to see if this maybe makes it a positive lineup. Nah, not really. Not quite.
We tried our best, though.
Pitching again, Jordan. Maybe what if we upgraded Eflin? Is that a possibility? Not really. All right, maybe just back to the drawing board on that one. Clear this out though. If you want to run it again. All right, whatever. Let's try to build the Nationals lineup. Unless, is there a different lineup you want to try to build, Eric?
No.
All right, let's try to build a national stack. So if we built a national stack, let's go. I guess we might as well just play the top hitters in the lineup, right?
Yeah, I think. Oh, I mean, I'm kind of screwing around with it right now here. I'm just seeing like everything's filled up here at this point. I'm just gonna like throw this in a $4. We're like building it here together, and again, you just transfer. It's lovely. It's super easy. I am. Yeah, Washington wise, I think if you're gonna run into any issues, gotta just go to like Abrams, gotta go to Wood, gotta go to Yepez, gotta go to Ruiz, got to go to Luis Garcia. I think that those are your four guys.
Okay.
I'm okay bypassing this Chaparro character. Maybe we'll see. He's going to be crazy popular today. Like amongst national stacks is what I'm getting at. He's 2K.
Yeah, let's see. What do we have him projected for ownership? I mean, yeah, like overall 9% ownership. But yeah, he'll be in some national stacks. But let's go, Jordan. If you didn't hear, let's see. So CJ Abrams is in the lineup. James Wood is in the lineup. You got Juan Yepez. Click Luis Garcia at second base. Now go to, let's see. Yepez is in the lineup. We've got Garcia. We've got James Wood. Go Keibert Ruiz at catcher. Okay. Now, what do we want to do as actually, let's go pitchers, Eric. This just might
Bailey
not project
Ober.
well enough to be positive ROI. We'll see, though. Go at pitcher.
Pavetta.
Do we want to go Ober Pavetta or Pavetta Eflin?
Whichever you want. Go ahead.
Yeah, let's go Ober Pavetta.
Yep. That's what I'm building it.
Okay. Actually, never mind. Let's go Pavetta Eflin, and we'll just do the Texas Rangers as a secondary stack.
That's great. We haven't even talked about like the conundrum that is building one lineup today and having shortstop. Everybody's 4,300 and up, and there's no Corey Seager with Texas, which is the team I want to stack the most. Which is just like what a crazy 3-game slate to have before you.
So plug in. Josh Smith or Josh Young at third base. They're very similar. Let's go Josh Smith at third base.
Yeah, we're going Abrams there. And then let's go Josh Smith.
And then
or you could go Young and then
we could so outfield we could play whoever else we want. Let's see, rest of the outfielders on the slate. Let's plug in. I guess we could do go Nick Castellanos and then Kyle Schwarber. We should have enough space for him, I think. Yeah, let's see how this ends up pulling out. I didn't want to do the Phillies, but we'll see. See if this helps it out a little bit. Just to have a higher projection. Maybe we get a better sim ROI here. This could end up being terrible though because it's a national stack. Hey, we did it. Slightly positive.
Team. Slightly positive, just like doing shows with me.
Depends on the day of the week. I would say very positive, if I'm being honest. Very positive. Some would say the only thing more positive is taking advantage of free money from Bet365, which you guys want to sign up for. Link is down below in the description box. Here's how easy it is to build your bankroll over Bet365. Make a $10 deposit. You place a $5 bet. And then that's all you have to do. They're going to give you $150 in bonus bet. So take advantage of that. If you or anybody know has a gambling problem, call or text the number 1-800-GAMBLER. And if you live in Pennsylvania, they went live there. Now, I guess initially we were doing the ad, we said just went live in Pennsylvania. Now it's been like they've been live in Pennsylvania for a month. That's the most recent state where Bet365 went live. And so take advantage of it. Claim your free bets over there. Let's see. What are some of the questions that we got in the YouTube chat? Day says, just got in. Did I miss a twin stack? Just overall, let me see. What do I have for twin stacks for the slate? I did not play very much of the Minnesota Twins, which may be a little bit problematic because I don't have a lot of Cody Bradford either. But also, I think there's a scenario where Bradford pitches like 5 innings, and you get the bullpen for the rest of the game, and just other teams outscore the Minnesota Twins. So there are other teams I'm prioritizing. Also, something I don't really love about Minnesota is that I do like looking for leverage on small slates. Bradford himself doesn't really have that much ownership. If we have to, let's do it this way, Eric. 6 teams to stack on today's slate. What order do you have them in terms of priorities for you?
Ooh, I will tell you exactly because I just got my 150 done. So this will be lovely. Philly is one. Okay. So this has to be done with a grain of salt. So if you're playing 150, if you're playing 20 max, this is the order. If I weren't, because I'm playing one lineup and I'm going to play Texas as my 5-man, I then have 1 Minnesota bat and 2 Boston bats. So those are that's the construction that I have today. I have Pivetta, I have Zach Wheeler as my pitchers. So you can take that for what you will, but I think number 1, I have Philadelphia for large field. I'm looking at Philly as being number 1. Number 2 is Baltimore. It's a little bit weird to me. Well, I guess it makes sense going up against Pivetta. I'm okay with it. Number 3 is Texas. I would actually just flip-flop those two. I would be finding a way to get onto more Texas there. So we'll go Philly 1, Texas 2, Baltimore 3, Boston 4, Minnesota 5, and Washington 6.
Okay, so it's kind of tiers for me. Tier 1 is the Texas Rangers. I like the leverage that I'm getting off of Bailey Ober. Then it's the next teams grouped together, the Baltimore Orioles, the Philadelphia Phillies. Those are teams I just kind of view as being the teams that are expected to have the most output on the slate. Then I get the Washington Nationals, and that's just solely for some leverage off of Zach Wheeler. And then Boston Red Sox, Minnesota Twins. I hardly got any stacks of those 2 teams, my top 150 lineups, just a couple of them sprinkled in, but nothing all that significant. In total, I have, let's see, looks like 8% of the Boston Red Sox, and then, 2% 5-man stacks, 5% 4-man stacks, the Minnesota Twins. So those 2 teams, Red Sox, Twins, did not show up very frequently for myself. Let's see, any other questions in Discord? Nope. And then from the YouTube chat, Eric Johnson wants to know, can you game stack the Twins game? Yeah, you certainly can. I prefer the Rangers side to the Twins, but yeah, I definitely think that's something that you can potentially do today. And no other questions right now in the chat.
I see
Eric,
PJ asked
about the stacks for tonight.
No, but PJ said, what's easier, a night with Eric or free money from Bet365? Ask Greg. He's had both.
Bet365 is paying us money to sponsor. They're the sponsor of the program. Where it was that that was so many things combined together. Go back to the image, Jordan.
Oh, nipple fuck!
Yeah, so we've got Steve Carell in 40-year-old virgin with Eric's face photoshopped on him, and then just piles of money in the background for no reason at all. Mostly singles.
Mostly,
which is
all.
fitting,
There's like an occasional 5. You don't want to know what I have to do for those.
Probably not that much different than what you did for the single. You just did it 5 times.
I mean,
if I had to guess.
Unbelievable.
If I had to guess.
Oh, I hate you!
The thing that's just unnecessary comment in the YouTube chat that made me laugh for no reason. The thing that's great about Eric, though, is he really knows how to be efficient, because there are ways you could earn all 5 of those singles at the same time. There's no shortage of hands, feet, and holes in Eric Lindquist's body. He makes use of all of them. That's why he's such a great employee. Eric, are there any other topics that you have in mind for tonight's slate? Any other stacks? I mean, we've talked about all of them at this point. Any other stacks are important to you on DraftKings? Now we can look at the FanDuel stacks a little bit as well.
Let's look at the FanDuel stacks, and then please, can we get this done with? Because I feel very violated in so many different ways.
And then as soon as you're done, you're going to go back to your second job where you can earn more of those singles and be even more violated. FanDuel stacks, refreshing the ownership right here on screen. Here is what we have on FanDuel. Philly's even more popular. They're 26% owned on FanDuel. Orioles, 19% owned. Minnesota Twins, 16% owned. Red Sox, 14% owned. Rangers, 14% owned. And then you got the Nationals at 10% ownership. One thing I personally find a lot more difficult about the FanDuel slate relative to the DraftKings slate, with there being no popular pitchers other than Zach Wheeler, there isn't leverage to be found by stacking against Bailey Ober or anything like that. So it really does come down to just what do you make of these offenses relative to their ownership? And to be honest, our top stacks was the ownership being pretty fair on FanDuel. I think it is a very, very difficult slate on FanDuel. I guess if I'm building one lineup, I'm most inclined to go to the Boston Red Sox just because Zach Eflin is the second most popular pitcher. And we do have them as being slightly under-owned, although nothing crazy.
I think I'm gonna play Nationals on FanDuel. I reserved one lineup here. I was like, oh, do I cancel it or do I play it here before we get to lock? Because you have like 15 minutes or whatever. I'm gonna play it here. I think the Nationals are kind of interesting, or much more interesting, I think, on FanDuel, where on DK, there's a lot of ways that Zach Wheeler is going to end up optimal. I think that we're talking about the 25%-ish number there, but like, there's so many different iterations where you need to get everything correct there. But I look at FanDuel, where he's going to be around 50% owned, maybe higher in smaller field contests, which is what I have reserved. And I think this might be the spot to like just jam some of these top guys there. It's not like they're cheap. I mean, Abrams is 3.4K, Yepez 3.1. Chaparro is the only guy there that 2.1K. I'm more inclined to play him over there as well. Luis Garcia, 3.1K, James Wood, 3.2. I'm going to try to mix and match some Washington. I think Washington might end up being the stack that I play over there.
Wish they weren't 10% owned.
Do you think they're going to be 10% if you have Wheeler at 50? That's what that's my thing, is that in a small field, I mean, I got a feeling that the Wheeler ownership is going to go up and the National ownership is going to come down.
Potentially.
Yeah, if I'm playing 10% Washington, I'm a fish, because that would not be a enjoyable experience, because there's basically like you're doing this. Like for me, it's more of just like on FanDuel where it's one pitcher site and you have the one bad Wheeler outing, where on DK, like Wheeler could have like an average outing and you don't necessarily need Washington. Probably want him in that lineup no matter what. I'm just contemplating it here. I'm contemplating as we're finishing it out here. Individual hitters. I'm looking at like some of the individual ownership for these guys. I think it's a little bit more appealing to fire up Washington on FanDuel is what I'm saying.
I mean, I get it from like just Zach Wheeler's ownership is going to be so high standpoint, but at the same time too, we've got the Washington Nationals, even though they have the least amount of ownership on the slate, as being the second most over-owned team on FanDuel in our top stacks tool. I just find FanDuel to be really, really difficult to play on, say, with the ownership being what it is. I think the field's got it pretty close to correct. If I was playing one lineup there, I would go with the Boston Red Sox as a stack. Any final thoughts, Eric? If not, we will do our home run picks for the day, and then we will be done for the night to let you get off to your other job and earn more of those singles.
Emphasis on the get off. Yeah, no, we can do that.
All right. Hit me with it, Eric. Gong of the day. Who is it?
Oh, my dear sweet Lord. So I have, this is the first day I can remember all MLB season where I didn't make one home run bet, where I didn't go to the sports books and decide, you know what, this is going to be the spot. So this is truly just a DFS guy. And we're going to head over to Texas. Bailey Ober, the fly balls. He's back in our lives. We haven't talked about him. He's young like a horse. Josh Young, Jung. This guy is already just like, I mean, he's just going to be one of those like hitters that can actually transform a lineup at some point in time. It's been hit and miss so far, but last season, 47.4% hard hit. He's only at 37.8% this season. I think as he continues along, the barrel percentages will come back. He was at 10% in 2022, nearly 12% in 2023, only 6.7% barrel percentage. I think it's a buy low spot, number of buy low spots here. So young like a horse, Josh Young, he goes yard today.
Gunnar Henderson is going to be my home run pick. I think his power swing is back. We went a really long time where people were picking Gunnar Henderson and he just wasn't really homering all that often. Gunnar Henderson overall for the season has been
30 of them.
He's been ridiculous overall for the year. Yeah, like you said, 30 homers, actually 6.5 wins above replacement overall for the year, 160 WRC plus. So he is a bona fide superstar now. And honestly, there aren't that many guys that I like to pick for home runs today. And he's just the player I have the most exposure to, who I think is probably the most likely to homer. If you look at him overall, he only had, I think it was one homer in the last month before last night, where he did end up hitting a home run against the Washington Nationals. But anyway, Gunnar Henderson, that is my home run pick. And I see Chris Williams in chat saying, great that I stole his. Well, Chris, you could also go with Gunnar Henderson, which I see you posted into chat there. We've got Emac going with Cedric Mullins. Eric Johnson is going with Miranda. You see Kyle Schwarber from Wellywell. I was a little bit annoyed by this last night because I was stuck in between Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber as my home run pick. I knew I wanted to go to a Philadelphia Philly, and then he got the grand slam out of Kyle Schwarber. But no,
I was tilted because the only reason I didn't take Vlad last night is you took Vlad the night before. And so I went Alejandro Kirk because I was just jamming Toronto. That worked out pretty nicely, but not with Alejandro Kirk. What an absolute fat bag. I'm not very happy with that guy.
Funny to watch him run the base though, because it's like he's not proportioned like an athlete or anything. He just runs like a fat guy down the street.
He runs like
Sotex
Wario.
has got Marcus Semien. We got Royce Lewis from Eric Johnson. I see Abreu from Father Time. Wong Dong from Ryan Stubbs. Bryce Harper is the pick from Pierre Hines, as well as from Boss Brew. Malukar is going with Rafael Devers. Hayes is going with Alec Boehm. Then we've got Marcus Semien from Charles Moran. And I'll do one more look through the Discord chat. Yeah, nothing else has come up. So guys, thank you very much for watching. If you've not done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Have a great night. Regular baseball slate tomorrow, but we'll get through today's 3-game slate. It'll be fun. Somebody will win some money. Maybe it won't be me, but maybe it might be you. It'll be somebody. Peace out. See you guys tomorrow.